how do you think the U.S. should handle that APEC summit? Should they say, Xi Jinping, you can't come?
Well, we should, one, stop begging him to come. And then two, I would deny a visa. We denied visas for a long time to Modi because of what happened in Gujarat when he was there as the regional boss. And then we, of course, rescinded that. But yeah, if you declare a genocide, shouldn't the leader that's, overseeing that genocide then be held accountable for that?
Well, you wouldn't want to hurt China's feelings.
Yeah. Also, as an expert on genocide, that also makes him an expert on human rights.
Exactly. The contradictions here are unimaginable. But let's go back to the original topic: Western China and the stands. Remember, Xinjiang's originally Xinjiang, new frontier, right? Has not always been Chinese territory. Let's explore the language a bit. The real name is East Turkestan. We were talking about the 5 stands: Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkestan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. But there was a 6th, and that's East Turkestan. Annexed back in 1950, 1951. Why don't we talk about that more? And Tibet, the Dalai Lama is, getting ready to depart. He's named his successor. Unfortunately, Chinese law says he can't reincarnate outside of Tibet. Again, the idiocy of that. We should be mocking that. We should be, and then we should support Tibet. I was at an event, a conference, I can't tell you which one, but because of Chatham House, but the Chinese rep, guy named Da Wei, who's out and about right now. Man, he's the guy who's allowed to gently criticize the PRC. So he looks like he's one of us, but he's not. On one of my slides, I put the word Tibet. And I was basically saying India's perspective on Tibet. I wasn't mentioning it, as an American. That guy, he completely dropped the pretense of being a friendly, happy guy. And he just made a complete spectacle of himself in front of the whole group. And then the meeting adjourned. And then very publicly came to me and castigated me in a very loud voice for even saying Tibet on one of my slides. I see they're a little sensitive on this topic. Why don't we?
We should push.
We should. Central Asia, the border with Xinjiang, East Turkestan, these are all things that we should be talking about. The genocide. And we're not.
I'm curious, talking about Central Asia, how you think Russia and China are going to intersect there, because it's interesting. China's moving in economically with the Belt and Road, but in some of these reports of Uyghurs and Kazakhs being taken by China, there's been reports of people being kidnapped from Kazakhstan back into Xinjiang in China. And Kazakhstan is also, historically like a satellite of the Soviet Union, Russia, and Russia has security personnel in Kazakhstan. And some of these reports and people were talking about essentially being taken in by Russian security personnel working in Kazakhstan in order to help the CCP repatriate people to China. So what do you think that is going to happen if the CCP continues to kind of move into these stands, not just economically, but politically?
You remember Operation Fox Hunt is not just the US, it's global. And most countries resist less than we do on these forced extraditions. Kazakhstan is one of them. No, I would think that the Russians would take great umbrage at that, especially if one of these Kazakhs happens to be their boy, they're in Astana or whatever. So again, but Russia can't say too much because they're in many ways obligated to maintain this facade of friendship and all the rest. But you asked about where we can push. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization. When that first came up, I'd scared the crap out of me. This could actually be something.
Just for our viewers, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is a little bit like a Chinese NATO.
Correct. It's in theory just a talk shop, but in fact, the major event out of each annual event is a military exercise. It's purported to be counterterror, but it happens to be a beach landing and a counterterror operation. Yeah, but the SCO, the Russians have no real interest in supporting that. If you look at the amount of Russian participation in these Shanghai Cooperation Organization exercises and the number of Chinese participants, it's way out of whack. And so clearly there's greater interest on the one side than in Beijing and Moscow. And it is in direct conflict with the Central States Treaty Organization, CSTO, which was already in existence, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization has sort of tried to displace it. So again, these are obvious areas where China is pushing Russian influence out of Russia's sphere of influence. And if I was the Russians, I would speak up. Also, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization includes India and Pakistan. How's that working? Yeah, I mean, it's hilarious how cobbled together it is. Yeah, how it's not anything of real. But it's not to say it can't have impact. It could. Iran's in it. I think Afghanistan's now part of it. We should watch it closely, and then we should, obviously message on where it's failing.
Well, I guess my question is, Putin obviously must know all the ways China is pushing Russia influence out of Central Asia, and he must also be seeing the precarious position Xi Jinping is in. How do you, what is he planning? He can't, obviously he knows this friendship is a sham. Xi Jinping is not, he might not be there forever.
Xi Jinping is taller than Putin. Have you ever seen them together? I mean, that just in itself is a message. I mean, it's got to be psychologically very painful for Putin to deal with that. And then there's rumors.
I know, but Putin does look much better shirtless on a horse.
That's true. But your question brought to mind the Arctic, because Central Asia and the Arctic are two sides of the same coin. The PRC is blasting through Central Asia. And so is it any wonder why Russia is actively resisting the Chinese attempts to use the Arctic as its, shorter route to markets and such? And no. And the Russians are not going to enable their lips and teeth partner, the Chinese, to now surround them by putting the PLA Navy in the Arctic and the PLA Army forces in Afghanistan, or the irregular forces that they've got out there. I mean, you think if you're Russia, you're feeling contained by the Chinese. And let's talk about the word containment. There was a recent article here about how we need to entangle the Chinese into the international system. This idea of a revitalized binding strategy. The article talks about that the U.S. has no strategy. Well, I just hate to say it. We just don't want to say it. The strategy has been since 2017 to contain this badness, right? That's what I was trying to do there, is containment. The pandemic, the first thing we tried to do was to contain the pandemic. So we are back to a Cold War strategy of containment. And it worked last time. Why are we so adverse to admitting we're doing containment this time? I don't know. We should.
It's a Cold War mentality.
Yeah. And of course, we react to that. That's a bad thing. I think we know
it is a Cold War.
I mean, I think I'm just reminded of Blinken's first China policy speech, where he kept talking about how we need to if China wants to be part of the international order, it needs to do such and such. But then the assumption or the message we're being is we assume that the CCP wants to be part of the international order.
Only to undermine it. Yeah. They don't want to be part of the international order as it stands. And the rest of the world likes it, right? This has been the most successful global organization for the last 70 years. But the PRC doesn't like it. So why shouldn't we jealously defend it instead of try to adapt it to this new organization, the CCP, that wants to ruin it? I don't know. World Health Organization, WIPO, we barely kept them out of the World Intellectual Property Organization. I mean, I'd give you a lot of examples. They should be out of that organization, or they should at least be minimized in the international system, or we should create a new one in a containment mindset that only includes people that want to, pursue prosperity and peace, not genocide.
I mean, is there a way to contain them in places like the WHO or the UN, places where they're already so influential?
As you know, they use this idea of elite capture to get people from lesser, lower income countries to vote their way in the UN. I think the only way to do it is to just start over in some form. Again, I keep going back to the World Health Organization, but the World Trade Organization has similarly failed. The World Bank has similarly failed, where it's completely under the control of the PRC. I mean, the World Bank is completely infiltrated. And PRC people who have admitted, as you recall, that they are not in the United Nations to advance global interests. They are there to advance PRC interests. They're the only country that actually says that. And so they're in the World Bank doing all they can to advance PRC interests, and they run it. They may not run it at the top, but by putting their bureaucrats throughout the organization, they are very adept at driving decisions that support Chinese interests and not global interests.
So you think these international organizations have basically become about as effective as the League of Nations?
Well, yeah. again, because you've brought the fox into the henhouse, and you're letting it run amok in the henhouse. The UN worked fine when there was one Soviet Union, and the rest of the world was basically in agreement that we need to resist that. And the UN and the Soviets weren't necessarily that influenced because they didn't have any really economic clout. But the PRC, with its renminbi influence, is getting people to make the wrong decisions because there's financial or personal interests involved. I mean, it's a great system when you think about it, if you want to undermine a well-functioning international system, but it's not making the UN a better organization. And we should not participate in a human rights council that undermines human rights.